Hello, bruvs. We're back with the Memoirs of Bridget Hitler, edited by Michael Unger, published by Duckworth in 1979. It is illustrated, although I guess photos are illustrations, but it's not the particular tense I would use. Chapter 12. As I strolled back towards the house, Pat came towards me. I told him Adolf had approved my trip, but I didn't have a chance to ask him to let you come along. You mustn't, Pat began, but broke off quickly. His face indicated nothing of what he was thinking, but instinctively I knew his sudden silence was to avoid giving anything away to the guards in front of the house. Although they stood as impassive as statues, I realized Pat was right. Further conversation was prevented by the approach of Angela, who, with two maids at her heels, had been setting the table out on the open porch. It was nearly lunchtime. We sat down on the porch to wait, having nothing to do, and truth to tell, I was rather tired, having been on the go all the morning. After a quarter of an hour, we saw Adolf crossing the garden towards the guards' quarters. Angela told me he always goes out before his own meal to see if the SS guards are satisfactorily provided for, to create attempts at fellowship, Pat added for my ears. When we sat down at lunch, we were joined by Schaub and Bruckner, whom I now saw for the first time. He was a brute of a fellow, as Pat had said, but with handsome features. As Adolf was presenting him to me, another man, about Adolf's age, came towards us. He was Amann, a typical German type with a shaved head, whom Adolf addressed as Du, the familiar form of you, reserved for the family or old friends. He had been Adolf's direct superior in the regiment in which Adolf served during the last war. Adolf was so loyal to him that he even mentioned him in Mein Kampf. He also made him director of German publishing. Scrambled eggs, asparagus swimming in butter, artichokes, pills, mushrooms, salad, and dessert, Jesus Christ, dessert composed the menu of the meal which was set before us. Angela, like the mother of a great household, served us all without formality. Everything was delicious. We all ate merrily, including Adolf. I regarded my host. What do you got, bruvs? I'm reading the Memoirs of Bridget Hitler. I regarded my host. He was bolting his foot at what I can only describe as a ravenous rate, as though it were a business operation to be completed with great efficiency and dispatched as soon as possible. During our earlier encounter, I had felt Adolf had become a man of the world, not without a certain manner and air, even though an actor's rather than a gentleman's. Now, however, as he leaned way over his plate to shorten the distance between the food and his mouth, all the talking loudly and laughing boisterously at the sallies between Amann and Bruckner, all poise was dropped, and his lack of breeding came through the bluff. Angela shook her head reproachfully and claimed that he would suffer for eating so fast. During his earlier years, he told me, he had suffered greatly. Greatly he suffered from indigestion, a condition brought on by gulping his food too quickly, eating at all hours of the day and night, instead of at regular intervals, indulging in fat and greasy sausages, drinking beer and smoking too much, and above all, getting overwrought at his own fiery speeches. When the doctors convinced him that these excesses were making him a wreck, he changed his style. Thanks, bruv. Not for himself, Angela commented, but because he must save his strength for the cause. The doctors had ordered him to become a vegetarian, teetotaler, and non-smoker, and Angela saw to it that he followed their prescription. He has never wavered, and he doesn't even drink real coffee. as it is too stimulating. But hag coffee, which contains no caffeine. What the hell is hag? I guess coffee without caffeine's hag. On this particular occasion, the dessert was Adolf's favorite, consisting of a trifle. Is that supposed to be a truffle? Trifle made with sherry, Austrian fashion, and smothered with whipped cream. Apropos of the sherry, Angela told me this was the only alcohol he ever indulged in, but this pudding he would not forgo for anything. Aman had been recounting various anecdotes about Goring, who in Germany as well as elsewhere is a favorite target for the whip. One of their stories, new then, goes like this. One day, Goring, about to leave home for an official meeting, cannot find his poorly mérite. The whole house is turned upside down as Goring waits in a fury of impatience in his car. Finally, his adjutant comes running, decoration in his hand. Where did you find it? Goring demands. It was pinned on your nightshirt, Excellency. Adolf, laughing loudly with his mouth open, commented, No, my friend, I don't think he'll pay 10 marks for that one. Angela, to explain the joke, whispered that Goring always paid 10 marks for a new joke on himself. It is interesting to note that Goring's self-promoting has been highly successful. In England, and I believe in America too, everyone thinks that among the Nazi gang, the most nearly human is Goring. This point of view has been carefully cultivated to make people forget that it was this same fat man who organized and carried out the blood purge in which thousands died. Those who know Germany well rate the smiling Goring as the most dangerous Nazi of them all. After the meal finally straggled to an end, Adolf suggested that we go for a stroll. We started out attended by an athletic young SS guard. He carried blankets and a small hamper of provisions in case anyone should become hungry on the way. By this time the sun was shining ferociously. Looking up towards the crest of the mountain which rose loftily over us, I noticed the air was vibrating with haze. We walked so slowly, however, that I didn't tire, and very soon we came to the Konigsee, a deep crater-like lake fed by rainwater, flowing down the sheer cliffs that border it. We continued through the Mallerwinkel Artists' Corner, which Adolf took pleasure in pointing out to me as the place from which one could get the best view of the lake. He himself had often painted there, he told me, and inquired if I had noticed the paintings he had done of this lake, which were hanging in the house. Pausing for a moment, he gazed at the water over which the cliff rim cast its rugged shadow. As he watched broodingly, as though lost and oblivious to the others of the party, who stood rather awkwardly waiting for him to go on, I felt he was overcome by the romanticism of his own concept of himself. With a quick sigh, he turned and walked on for a few yards, and then suggested that we rest. The guards spread several woolen blankets on the ground. Then we all sat down. Adolf asked for Stollen sandwiches. Angela, after a careful inspection of the contents of the hamper, prepared several for him and took them to where he sat. Then she also poured out a glass of milk and peeled 2 apples and an orange for him before she took any serious interest in the wants of the rest of us. It was easy to see that Adolf was as dependent on her as is a child on its mother. On this occasion, he was completely relaxed and made little jokes, laughed, and teased her affectionately. It was difficult seeing this childishly vain man, who so obviously enjoyed being the center of a small, intimate party, to realize that he was the ruthless killer I knew him to be. There he is, fashionable Adolf. I arrived back at the house so tired that I was glad to retire to my room for a nap. I don't know how long I slept before I woke up. Starting down the corridor towards Pat's room, I met Angela, who suggested that I come into her quarters. The moment we were inside, she began speaking about Paula. It struck me that she was not too pleased that Adolf was expending so much effort to get Paula to come to Germany. I sensed that she and her brother had just been talking about it. Paula is the biggest tittle tattle in creation, Angela said a little hotly, in the tone of woman on woman, women on women, all over the world. She never seems to know what should be said and what should be kept quiet. Dear Adolf has struggled so hard to get where he is. You'd think his own sister would realize a man in his position must not be gossiped about. And yet, Paula keeps telling silly stories about him. I even heard that she told people he is crazy. I don't know if it is a good idea for her to come here. She is sure to fight with Adolf if she sees him, but at least she won't be able to talk to outsiders. W. Book. Perhaps under ordinary circumstances I might have been amused by Angela's self revelation, but during my whole visit to Germany there was really only one idea in my mind: how to get myself and Pat out of the country. Angela's intimate tone gave me the kind of confidence I needed to broach the subject of Pat's accompanying me to Salzburg. Even though he had opposed my doing so, I determined to venture it. Perhaps by one clever stroke I might succeed in accomplishing the object of his more devious plan. I am a little nervous about this trip over the border, I confided to Angela. In fact, I feel very distressed at the thought of what might happen. I don't like to go alone. What would you think if Pat should go with me? Angela's rather petulant expression stiffened into rigidity. That's entirely out of the question. Willie has been having a few days off, but tomorrow his holiday is over. His name makes it imperative that he be punctual. But couldn't you ask? No, Bridget, it's not to be thought of. Her tone was so definite I knew it was useless to insist. Seeking a new topic of conversation, my eyes fell on a copy of Neues Deutschland, New Germany, which lay on a small table next to my chair. Are you interested in astrology? I asked, since I knew it was a weekly paper devoted exclusively to that subject. Yes, she admitted at once. I subscribed to 4 every week. Eloise always used to object to my interest, I commented. It was on the tip of my tongue to add that it was also I who introduced Adolf to the subject. But not Adolf. He never does anything without consulting the astrologers. He has always been interested in the stars and planets. In fact, she added, he often fetches me out into the garden to look through the telescope, and he has tried to get me to study astrology seriously. She came to an abrupt stop. Adolf is expecting us in his study. We should go now. Adolf's study was at the front of the house next to his bedroom. Angela knocked at the door, and we were immediately told to enter. 2 men carrying drawings came out as we went in. The room was fairly large and lined with books. Before the window was a large desk where Adolf was sitting. He was wearing glasses and had changed into a comfortable blue coat with leather buttons, such as the Bavarians wear on weekdays. The material was something like fine satin canvas. My plans for enlarging and improving Berchtesgaden, Adolf said, indicating blueprints on his desk. I glanced at them. Around the original house were added wings and buildings. Adolf pointed to a series of dramatically rendered artists' drawings of the finished project. Rows of pavilions stretched into a town. All the buildings were carved into the rock. Underground caves and structures fully equipped with electric power and subsurface water systems connected to the superstructure, which specially designed elevators. With specially designed elevators. Did you design it yourself? I asked, remembering his talents for architecture. Partly, said Adolf. Partly, was Adolf's reply. And although he said nothing more, this one word created for me the impression that he had. When he rolled up the blueprints which had covered his desk and put them away, I noticed that books were neatly piled at both ends. Oh. There was a large ornate lamp, and next to it was a photo of Geely when she must have been about 12 years old. A small vase held delicate white flowers. They were edelweiss, not often available, for it grows only in places hazardous to reach. The decor was completed by a small statue to Germania, holding a torch and miniature swastika flag. Angela and I had found places to sit. Pat was ensconced in a cozily cushioned chair when we came in and returned to it. Adolf removed his glasses and turned to me. Ah, Bridget, he said, I hear you went to Mass in the village. I started to comment on the clothes of the parishioners, not wishing to return the ball he'd thrown, but he barely gave me time to finish my sentence when he was off in his own direction. When I was a boy in Austria, when a rich man died, they tolled the bells all day, but when a poor man died, what did they do? As Adolf spoke, he indulged in the exaggerated mimicry that is second nature to him. First, he would be an assiduous bell pusher. Then he would be pleased to rattle off a few unintelligible phrases, abbreviating the blessing so much that it was scarcely more than a wave of the hand. And then he was serious. When I have my say, Catholicism's day will be numbered. I will do more good for the German people in a year than all the religious battle has brought in centuries. I made no reply, but Pat told me later that my expression was such that anyone could have read in it that fireworks would break out in a moment. Whatever his reason, Adolf jumped off the topic as quickly as he had begun, pointing to a book at one end of the desk. He asked me if I had noticed what it was. I looked at it and saw that it was a German translation of Carlyle's biography of Cromwell. Taking it in his hand, he handed it almost reverently as he leafed through it. What I am today and what I hope to become, he said after a brief hesitation, I owe more to these two men than to any other. They were truly great. They placed England 200 years ahead of any other European power. He paused briefly. My own life is an exact parallel of Oliver Cromwell's. He, too, recruited his army from among the people, and after the overthrow of the aristocracy, gave the reins of government back to the people. Adolf went on enthusiastically about the glories of England. I would have to admire her, if for no other reason, because she produced Carlyle, one of the greatest philosophers of all time. Unfortunately, he added, she is being poisoned from within by opportunists. She will never be able to attain her old position in the world if this is not quickly stopped. I asked Adolf whether he thought Cromwell's messages were better than those of Napoleon. Both men handled the situations which arose as seemed best at the time. In many ways, I believe Cromwell's solutions were better. Of course, Cromwell was completely forgotten after his death because he was unable to keep or consolidate his power, as Napoleon did by having himself crowned emperor, Pat asked. That was one way, of course. For the first time, Angela entered the conversation, turning to me with a rather condescending smile. Did you know, Bridget, that Adolf was offered the crown of Bavaria? They even took the crown jewels from Nuremberg. That is not to be discussed, Angela, Adolf reproved, giving her a stern look. But he was not loath to explain that as he was the head of the German Workers' Party, such a step was entirely out of the question. And in any case, I will consolidate my strength without resort to such old fashioned methods. On this note, Adolf stood up, letting us know that the visit was over. As Angela started to come with us, Adolf asked her to remain. Her yes, Adolf, was exactly like the acquiescence of a child about to be scolded. Pat and I decided to walk in the garden so we could talk. When I told him of my conversation with Angela, he was very disturbed, though he tried not to let me see how much. What a pity you said that. Now you will be suspected, and I shall be worse off. Further discussion was prevented by Angela, who was coming towards us swiftly. Bridget, she began at once, I told Adolf you were worried to go alone. He will send someone in whom you can have perfect confidence to help you cross the border. Thank you, Angela, was all that I could say. When we were alone, Pat said, You see, now you'll have someone to go with you, and you know who that someone will be. One of the guards, pardon. That's bad. They are all chosen and sworn in by Adolf himself. There will be only the ghost of a chance that you can do anything. But how can Adolf send guards into Austria? It's a foreign country. Pat looked at me as a sophisticated man of the world oh my gosh. Pat looked at me as a sophisticated man of the world at oh my god, I can't do it. Just a weird tensing of this. Pat looked at me as a sophisticated man of the world at an innocent girl. You believe that? He said. You have no idea how well he has organized everything. His tone was discouraging as he went on. If only you didn't have to be involved in this affair. I'm helpless to get you out of it. Any action I might take would only make it more dangerous for you. So long as they don't know our plan, you'll be all right, I think. But I don't know for sure. That's why I wished you hadn't said anything to Angela about me if they're suspicious. Well, Pat, I'll just have to do the best I can and put my trust in God. And Paula, added Pat, the only thing to do is to place yourself under her protection. If she dares go as close to the German border as Salzburg, she must have taken every precaution. But promise me, whatever happens, that you will try to get away from Adolf's men. They are not the type to hesitate at anything, even to shoot you, but I still think we'd better risk it. And don't think that because everyone has been so polite to you, the danger is only in my mind. It was time for Pat to take the night train back to Berlin. When we said goodbye and I watched him go, a feeling of great depression came over me. That night, alone in the enemy's house, I scarcely slept at all. The balsam air no longer invigorated me, and the dark mountain that towered behind the house seemed sinister rather than majestic. As I lay in bed, staring out into the mysterious night, a chill crept around me. It had all sounded quite simple when Pat and I had discussed my chances of escape, and the Hitlers had seemed so gemütlich. Gemütlich, I don't know how to say that. Gemütlich, as at this afternoon's picnic. Yet the horrors taking place in Germany were no longer remote. Every minute I had been there, they came closer. I thought of Geely, the only human being my brother-in-law had loved. She was dead, and the Germany he claimed so fervently to adore was dying. The silence of the mountain, which had seemed so tranquil and beautiful, was now like the silence of death. Uneasily, I wondered what the future would hold for Pat, for me, for my strange family by marriage. And that's the end of chapter 12. The Memoirs of Bridget Itla.